this question of always putting the work back on the easel, in the sense that I rarely abandon. Let's say you have a project that's that never really came to fruition. I never bury it. I never put it away completely. I'm saying, oh, maybe we have to revisit this, but when the time will come, there's a moment where there'll be the time to revisit it. And very often these things have matured, they've become, you've matured, and they've been informed by tons of other things that happen in your life or that happen in your work. And so that's why very often, because I give seminars and I speak to young artists sometimes and all that, and I always say, never look at something as a complete failure. Maybe it wasn't the right time, maybe it wasn't the right group of people that was surrounding you when you were doing it and all that. So let it sleep. Don't bury it. Don't put it in a closet. Let it kind of wander, and eventually it'll come back to you. And I think you have to have the belief that your work is it's something that's alive, right? It's not. I believe that the work I do informs me, and
Yes.
I'm not like this guy who comes in and says, I have a vision, and this is where we're going. I have some ideas for playgrounds and things that we want to do, but you have to let the work present itself to you, and eventually it'll present itself to you in its best fashion.
Well, it's very interesting. I mean, when you mention
Everybody thinks that Shakespeare, they have this image of Shakespeare in Love, that he's in this ivory tower with a quill, and he's writing about his muse, and he writes these monologues, and he writes these plays and all that. And of course, nothing could be as false as that. Shakespeare was a man of the theater. He was if he did exist, he was a designer, he was a director, and he had to make the thing work. And a lot of theater writers nowadays are people who write in their corner, they do their things, and then they're read, and eventually, if they're lucky, they're being staged. And often when staging arrives, the directors often get a lot of flack from the writer, because the writing doesn't come from the stage process, it comes from the writing process. So of course, there's always this joke about how many playwrights does it take to change a light bulb? None, because there will be no changes. So there's this thing where the plays today that are written, I've never been put into the meat grinder of something called the production. It's exactly the opposite that happened in Shakespeare's days, where he would write from the meat grinder of the production. Hamlet is the best example, it's the best play ever, best soliloquies ever, but there's a reason for that. It's because if you study from a practical point of view all of Hamlet, there's 40 actors that have to change costume from the banquet scene to the fort of brass thing, and then after there's a set change, and there's no way you could do this 5-hour play without long intermissions. So the best thing is that you write a monologue and you set the guy in front, the curtain, and you say, okay, so what's the arc of the character? Well, no, you're not suicidal yet, so we'll wait for the to be or not to be, but before that, you think at that point your character thinks that he's not courageous enough, and that's okay. No, this is too solid flesh, and then go there, and it's all written for the theater machine, for the theater sequences, for the meat grinder of the production, and that's what makes it a great play. It is not something that is away from that. It is completely into that. So that's why a lot of the work that we do involves that. All of the dramaturgical solutions are always intimately connected to the technical solutions, and that is probably perceived as if there's no inspiration. It's not, the romantic image of the poet writing this or writing that, but actually that's how it really works. Good theater has both its form, its content working form, its content working together, meshed together. This is a kind of a one day at Ex Machina. So the way we do our work. So we always have these kind of dramaturgical meetings early in the morning, and we gather around the table, and our people do all sorts of research and stuff. They come in and have these new ideas from the night before or whatever in the morning, and then we do a bit of writing on the board, we do a lot of structuring because a lot of the show is about structuring and changing scenes, places, and characters, and all of that we do. And once we all agree about that, then we go into all the improvs and we try stuff. So we have tons of props and stuff coming in, and we costumes and prototypes and things that we play around with. And then it's noon, and we stop, and the whole afternoon is off, and we start in the evening again. And then we do something that is a bit more controlled and a bit more staged. What happens in the afternoon is all of the technical people, the designers, the assistants, and all of that take the ideas that grew in the morning, do prototypes, build things, do research, print stuff, so that in the evening we try the ideas that came up in the morning. And anyways, creative energy is good in the morning, and in the evening. In the afternoon, you're just digesting your lunch. So this actually gives the actors an opportunity to go to the bank and have a good dinner, and after that have a rest or do the laundry, whatever. But that's the system that in the past 15 years that Ex Machina we've been doing. We rehearse in the mornings and in the evenings. There's a moment also in the work process where we have to identify what kind of animal our show is. And the reason why is because then we will know what the period of gestation will be. A hamster takes 16 days. A pig is like 9 weeks or something. A dog is 9 weeks. A man is 9 months, and an elephant is 24 months. So each species come with its own gestation, and each show should be considered like a different animal. And we try to identify that quite early in the process and go, okay, this is the kind of show where it's going to be in 4 parts. And it's going to take probably 2 years and a half. And we're going to produce it like this, and this part we're going to produce first, and then we're going to premiere this at the same time. So and we create a kind of a system that resembles the animal that we're creating. This here is a year. Those are 52 weeks, right? The normal rehearsal time of a play in Canada comes down to about 110 hours of rehearsal. In Quebec, they usually kind of cram that into about 5 weeks of rehearsal, sometimes a bit more. If you're lucky, you get 6. At Ex Machina, we have about more or less, let's say, 8 weeks of rehearsals a year for a project, except we don't space it that way. This is how we space it. We would have sometimes 2 weeks, then 4 months goes by, everybody goes and does their, makes money doing television or whatever, they do their stuff. They come back, then we have another 2 weeks. Then they disappear again for a quite long period of time. Then they come back, we have 3 weeks. And then again 3 weeks. And of course all of this we jazz up. Sometimes we only have 5 days, and then we have 3 weeks and a half, and it changes all the time. But what's important, the reason why I'm showing this graphic is that, let's say that this is 8 weeks of rehearsals, but if you all bunch them up at the beginning of the year there, it's exactly 8 weeks. If you stretch it over this, it is more than 8 weeks, even though if in time it is 8 weeks. What happens between those periods is creative time. There's a thing behind your head, which is a kind of a rendering farm. There's a place there, your unconscious does something that it doesn't have time to do if you do your 8 weeks at a time. So the more you spread the project, the more it's rich, the more it's informed of all the other projects that you're working on outside. So sometimes we're always very surprised, we think, oh, this is probably going to be ready in a year. But sometimes we're halfway and we already have a show, or we have at least a semblance of a show, because a lot of stuff happens between those rehearsals. So we're not trained to think that way, but I think that this is a much better way of working. It happens very often that we have these public rehearsals because for us the audience tells us what it is that we're doing. I was talking about Christopher Columbus, knowing that we're going towards a continent, even if we don't know the shape of it. The only people who really can tell us what it is that we're talking about, what we're doing, is an audience. So somewhere along the line, halfway in the process, we do a couple of public rehearsals. So we open up the Caserne, which is our building in Quebec City, and we have 100 or 200 people coming in, no press, no media, and people just come and see where it's at. We, of course, it whips us a bit because it makes us want to do a nice performance. People stay afterwards. We have pizza and beer, and people talk about the show. They hated it. They have ideas for it, whatever. And then after that, we have a web address where people write their comments. It's supposed to be anonymous, which is not completely true, but we say that it's anonymous. And people write tons and tons of stuff, their impressions, and of course, then there's recurrent things, and there's tons of stuff that we never thought were in the show that are good stuff, and there's stuff that sucks, and we edit that out. But it's not like we're not doing this to please the audience. We're using the audience to help us shed light on what we're doing. The same idea with the opening night. Opening night should not be a guillotine. It should not be, this is the show and nothing changes. This is the show, and from now on, everything changes. Of course, I drive all the actors crazy because I like to let things cook a while. So we do the show and we let it cook for a week of performances, let's say, and then it kind of finds its shape, and then we know what it's about, and then we change everything, we cut it up, and then it cooks for another week of performances, and then after they go on tour, and then they're happy because there's no changes for about a month, and then I come along, and then I say, oh, let's change it, that doesn't go, or whatever, and then we change again. So we do that until the very last performance, and we consider the piece written on the night of the closing. That's when it should be called written. It's not on the first day, it's the very, very, very last day.